You're listening to Desire and Power with your host, Mira Salem.
Hey guys, welcome back to Desire and Power. I'm your host, Mira Salem, and today we are going to talk about why women fear their own sexual power and why they fear their desire. Now, I think that this really matters right now because I look at this from a very cultural perspective versus a personal one. Because I do believe that most of the psychological issues that we have are due to how we were brought up and what the cultural and societal paradigms around our upbringing were. So when I say that women fear their sexual power, what I mean by that is women hold back on their erotic aliveness. Women hold back on their aliveness in general. Women hold back on their desire. And they do that because of what it costs to fully let yourself be seen that way in today's society. That's why I say that it's a cultural issue because in our culture, we definitely still shame women for their sexual power. Like a woman who is fully sexually embodied gets a very different reaction societally than a man who is very sexually embodied, right? And when I mean sexual power, I want to be clear that it goes beyond just sex. It also means that she shows up differently in the world. A woman that is fully embodied in her erotic power shows up as more confident, more powerful. She shows up in a way that really tells people around her that, hey, you know what, this girl can handle it on her own, but she chooses to be here. She chooses to share space. It's a different energy. And I think that a lot of women, when they do get there, and some of them never do, but they get there, they're excited that they're finally there and that they finally healed all their trauma, that they understood themselves sexually. They get out into the world, and then the world does not reward it. It actually gets intimidated by it. Um, and I think that a big part of it is because this type of energy is very disruptive to the patriarchy. It's disruptive to the systems that have been in place that keep women down. Because a woman who is fully embodied, who has presence and influence and intelligence and knows how to take up space, that is a very disruptive energy for men in general. So the system does not want women to be in that power because all of a sudden that gives them a way to mirror the issues of the culture back to the society. And that's a scary thing for people that like to hold power. Now, there's consequences, right, to women when they learn early on how to be confident and how to be embodied. Like I said, society does not reward. So what happens to women over time is they start to dim that down. They start to be scared of their own power. They get scared of showing up fully because it's not met very well sometimes. There are people, of course, who love that, who appreciate it, who respect it. But as a culture, we're not there yet. So I really want to talk about a little bit of history here and why I say that this is a cultural issue. Um, if you really think about it, women have only really been able to be out in the workforce, have bank accounts, have their own house for maybe, 80-ish years, give or take, because these laws changed differently in westernized nations at different times. Some were in the 1930s, some were in the 1950s, but generally it's only been like 100 years. And when you look at that 100 years versus the patriarchy, which is hundreds and thousands of years, it's a blip in time. So society hasn't caught up with what feminism is all about, right? Society hasn't caught up to a society that actually looks at men and women as equal. There's still so many societal norms that put men up here and women down here, especially when it comes to things like power, influence, sexual power. So yeah, that's why we are the way that we are. And I just wanted to talk about it today because so many of these articles about like why women, fear their own sexual power and stuff stick to very spiritual mystique type ideas. And I wanted to bring it into reality and what it realistically costs us and why I'm gonna, die on this hill and say that this is a cultural problem. Now, let's quickly talk about what the difference between performing desire and actually embodying it means, because I've been throwing a lot of words around, right? When you are actually empowered in your own desire, when you are embodying it, when you're not performing it, it means that you are going after what you want for yourself. You are doing things because they are pleasing you, not because it's about pleasing somebody else or trying to get a reaction or a certain validation or a certain expectation met from another human being. But that's how we were taught to relate to each other in this society. So it's a society that's very much based on performance. So what does that look like for women? Because they get taught very early on how to perform for men, especially, right? Performance is you being in the bedroom and thinking, how does my body look? Is he enjoying this? How can I please him better? Is he going to be happier if I wear this piece of lingerie? That is not embodied desire. That is performance desire, which eventually robs you of your aliveness and depletes you. But we'll get into that a little bit later. First, I want to tell you that I am no stranger to this. Um, for the longest time, I performed desire, and I am going to be brutally honest about that. That's what I was taught as a young girl, right? Through entertainment, through media. I was taught that it was all about the man. It was about getting the hot man and being able to please the hot man. And my sex life sucked. Like, don't get me wrong. I put myself out there. I had fun. I went out. I had hookups. But it was so deeply dissatisfying for me. And it was so dissatisfying. And I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud on a podcast, but I'm at the point where, I'm old enough that I can talk about it. I did not orgasm with a partner until my 30s. I faked it. I faked it so much when I was younger. I look back now and I'm like, oh man, such a waste. But I didn't, not being able to get there with a partner made men feel very insecure. So instead of letting them feel insecure and being able to like actually communicate about what I wanted, hint, hint, I didn't even really know back then. Um, I just faked it so that they could feel good and that it could be over and that, yeah, it wasn't the best. Um, but this led me to feel like I was broken and that there was something wrong with me. And when I got to my early 30s, late 20s, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I need to figure this out. I am not going to accept this. For the rest of my life. I want to, have some fun and actually reach climax. So I went to therapy. I started studying tantra. I worked with Ms. Jaya and figured out my erotic blueprint. I did a lot of work to figure out my sexuality. And lo and behold, I realized that there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. The only thing that was wrong is that I was focusing on his pleasure versus my own. And it turned out that the things that really excited me and the things that were very erotic for me, a lot of the times had nothing to do with stimulation or penetration, but that is how our cultures sell sexuality to us, right? Everything is generally about stimulation and penetration and nothing else. I realize that, my erotic nature is very, very sensual. It's kinky, it's taboo. It lives a lot in the tension, in the anticipation. There's so many things that actually turn me on. But my problem is that I had a hard time talking about it. And actually, in my mid 20s, I had experiences where I was kind of starting to figure this out intuitively. And the first couple of times I started asking for things in the bedroom and got rejected for it, I was like, oh shit, like I'm too much. And not rejected in the way of like being dumped for asking, but just not being met. Like I would ask for something and then the guy would be like, yeah, yeah, totally. And then it would never happen, right? So over time I just learned, ooh, keep that part nice and quiet, you know? Don't rock the boat too much with your desires. Keep that underneath. But once I started doing this work and I realized this is a huge part of me, I was like, okay, I'm not toning this down anymore. You know, I'm going to be with people that can either handle it or can't handle it. So I started working on embodying my desire a lot more. Now, I want to talk about the fact that this is this is a problem for so many women. Like so many women have this issue and will not talk about it. And I talk to a lot of women. And it honestly makes me really sad. And it makes me feel like we have such a big problem to solve when it comes to relational attunement with one another, but we're so far away from getting there. Um, and I just want any women that have been in that place where they know that they're performing desire because they're so afraid of upsetting the relationship. They're afraid that if they ask for things, they're not going to be met, and it's either going to be disappointing or they're going to be rejected, or the guy's going to think they're too much and look for something that's easier. That is so legit. That is so legit. And I feel you. And I wish that I had like this happy ending story to tell you that if you were going to be powerful within your own desire, that all of a sudden you're just going to start, attracting better men. And that's not the case. We're still dealing with a major, major societal paradigm problem here, and it's going to take a long time to climb out of it. Now, there's obviously men out there that are great and that can handle it and that love it, and that are actually inspired by a woman who lives that way. But generally speaking, the general consensus, like we're not there yet. Um, So let's talk about men. Sorry, I've got my notes here just so that I can keep myself organized with this conversation. I want to talk about what happens when you do start living in a more embodied way and you show up as more present, as more powerful, as somebody with confidence because you now know how freaking amazing you are. That's what happens when you get in touch with your desires. You really get to look at yourself through a very different lens. So, what happens in relationships? Because when women go through this journey and they finally realize what they like and what they don't like, and how their erotic nature shows up in their life, they become more turned on human beings. And that process of being a more turned on human being leads you to show up more like a force to be reckoned with than just somebody who's, living surface level. You're deep. Basically, it brings depth into your life, right? And people can feel that. But a lot of women, when they start reaching that depth, they think that dating is going to get so much better. And I'm sorry. Because I think a lot of you know this, you actually start kind of getting the opposite reaction from men than you thought you would. I feel like once you're an embodied woman, men react to you in two different ways, three different ways. Because there's the one that loves it, the one that can handle it, the one that loves you being embodied, the one that likes to feel alive, because usually he's that way too. But then the other two types, and doesn't mean that one of them can't grow. Okay. But there is the type where you actually make them insecure just by being yourself, just by being present in the room, because they realize that you are a powerful force. And for some reason, that all their unresolved bullshit just comes to the surface in their own mind. And it's not because you pushed for anything, it's not because you asked any question. It is because living as an embodied human being makes other people who are not living that way ask themselves, why am I not doing this? Where am I stuck? How come she can do it? It's a weird thing, right? Because when you're an embodied woman, you don't chase men anymore. You can be deeply in love with them, you can deeply want them, you can deeply care about them. But this element of like chasing men is completely out the door because, again, you're not there for their validation. You're there because you are chasing your own pleasure, your own desire, your own path. And a good man can definitely be part of that, but it doesn't have that same energy of like, oh my God, I need this to be validated because you already validate yourself, right? And that's a weird thing for men because there's not a lot of women like that. So when they encounter a woman like that, uh-oh, things change, right? I've had the experience of being with men who, on paper, have had this like crazy sexual past and have done all of these crazy adventurous things and, been with hundreds of women and all these beautiful models and all of, and then all of a sudden, little old me makes them insecure. Crazy, crazy. All of a sudden, their bravado and their confidence and the way that they usually perform just drops down because all of a sudden, performance doesn't work for somebody that doesn't live in performance and they can feel that, they can sense that, and oh boy. So those type of men are either going to grow because of your presence and they're going to be able to, sit with themselves and face their shit and realize like, oh my God, she's the real deal. That's so cool. Or they're going to be like, shit, this is too much work. I'm not ready for this. I wasn't prepared for this. I'm out. I'm going to go find something easier. And then there's the other type that I told you that they love the embodied woman. They love her sexually. They love that she can go to places where maybe other women can't. They love her feeling alive and being able to receive and being able to get lost in pleasure. That's great. They love that. But they're still hanging on to this cultural idea of like needing to marry the good girl. So they'll have fun with you, they'll have the time of their lives, they'll share, they'll open, but when it comes down to long-term commitment, they won't choose you. They'll choose the good girl, the one that looks good on paper and that's easier to manage. Even if they're not happier with her, even if they don't feel as alive with her. And that's the part that really fucking hurts a lot of us. But again, and I want to say that like a lot of men are not doing this because they're malicious or bad or evil. Like they've been programmed. They've been programmed by patriarchy the same way that women get programmed by patriarchy to live in performance and servitude and dimming their light constantly so that they don't shake things up. The same patriarchy has fucked men over. It has taken away depth and connection. It has made them feel like failures if they connect to their more feminine side and have some freaking feelings. Like, this is not to put blame on men. This is just to name reality as it is right now and to talk about the realistic hardships that women go through when they are trying to embody their sexual power and desire. Okay? Because it's not easy, genuinely. It's not. All right, what else did I want to talk about here? Yes, I was gonna say there's a pattern. There's a pattern that women learn when they encounter this behavior from men, right? When they start to feel like men are getting insecure. Um, they usually start getting this pattern of like, what can I do so that he feels better? And that's how they start dimming their light. When they really like a guy and they're already embodied, they can start to dim it down again for the simple fact that they really, really like a guy and they can feel that their presence is a lot for them to handle and it makes them feel insecure. So they actually pull back on desire. And they never ask, like, hey, what's wrong with him? They just ask, how can I be different? And that really sucks. So don't do that. Um, there's better ways to do that. I'm going to talk about that at the end because I'm not telling you guys to be reckless with your desire. Like, don't start dating someone and then on the third date, give them a list of all your fetishes and kinks. Okay, that's a little too much. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's a time and a place to let your desire be known, and you have to be intelligent enough to be discerning of that time. you can hold back sometimes, depending on context, but I'm talking about overall. I'm talking about in general, you just dim yourself down and you let yourself stay dim until you feel yourself completely lose your desire, lose your libido, lose your excitement, and just get bored and lifeless. So, yeah. Yes. So this is again a cultural piece here. When we talked about women losing desire in relationships because they've dimmed themselves down, they're culturally we talk about that, but we don't talk about the real reason why. We just say, oh, it's just something that women do, they just lose desire in marriages. Like, how many times in long-term relationships does that happen to women, right? They're with somebody in the beginning, it's fun, it's new, it's exciting, they can kind of lean into that. But when their sexual desires are not met over a long period of time, which in many relationships they're not, then that starts to create the loss of libido to the point where women just don't want to have sex anymore. And then that blame gets put onto them. It becomes the women's fault, right? Like a lot of dudes will just be told, like, oh, just wait, if you marry, just know that in like 5, 10 years, your wife is not gonna, bang you anymore, basically. You hear that a lot. And what's not talked about culturally is that that is not just the fault of the woman. That is a fault of a mismatch in communication and shame and other negative emotions that have been culturally tied to women's desire. I mean, look at the frickin' serpent. It goes back to the stories of the Bible. I mean, women's desire was looked at as dirty and wrong and manipulative. So men actually get scared away from it a lot of the time subconsciously. Through how much we've gotten sex positive in the last 20, 30, 40 years, a lot of men will say things like, oh, I want my girl to be crazy. Oh, I want her to be downright nasty in the bedroom, blah, blah, blah. But then when they actually meet that, they either immediately go, oh, she's a hoe. I can only have sex with her. Don't even bother getting to know her. Or, oh, this is too much. I can't handle this because I'm not leading the situation. She wants to lead the situation now. That feels freaking weird. Don't like it. Don't like it. Even though they thought that's what they wanted, right? So it sucks because a lot of women in these long-term relationships, marriages, will go years and years and years and years wanting to, you know, just have some more dirty talk. Maybe they want to have a certain fantasy or a role play done with their husbands, but they're too scared of actually ever naming it. Um, Again, it could be the husband's fault for maybe shutting down a desire earlier on that made that woman feel like she can't talk about it, or it might be just her fault from not wanting to express it due to fear. And this is the fear that we're talking about, the fear of what might happen if she actually expresses that thing that she wants. um so again, what can you do? Obviously, on a personal level, you can get therapy, get help, and work through your shit, but we need to fix this on a cultural level if we want to have healthier relationships where there's actually equality between women and men. I asked myself a question here in my notes. It says, what's the honest truth you want women to hear? Um, the honest truth I want women to hear is, don't think that just because you are starting to embody your sexuality and your desire, that means that automatically that's going to make you more attractive to men. It might make you more attractive from a purely sexual and desire-based perspective, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to choose you. Sometimes your desire and your empowerment can actually scare them away. Unfortunate truth, but that's the truth. And that doesn't mean that anything's wrong with you. Um, and the other point that follows that is that you should be okay with being embodied because there's going to be pain on both ends. You're either going to be in pain because you're not living in an embodied way, and that starts to eat you from the inside and take away your vital life force, right? And so maybe it gives you relationship, but loss of vital life force, or the other pain of maybe ending up alone or not being in that perfect relationship that you want, but hanging on to your power. And to me, that's way more important because that erotic aliveness gets translated into so much more in your life. It gets translated into intellect, creativity, power in your career, in your drive, in your ability to interact with others, and how you show up in the world. I mean, it's literally like magical life force. And women are so much better at transmuting this energy into something useful and powerful. Female sexual energy is the energy of creation itself. Do you understand how fucking powerful that is? So my advice to women, if they're listening to this and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she's right. I should be taming down my power here because men might be scared of it or culture doesn't accept it yet." No, no, girlfriend. You do the complete opposite. You live in your power, you live authentic, you live true to yourself, and you use that power, you use that turn on, and you dump it into your work, you dump it into your life, you dump it into things that make you feel alive. And I promise, honestly, like it's not hopeless. Once you make peace with the fact that you might end up alone, a lot more men will flock your way. And then it's actually your job to be discerning and ask yourself, can they meet me here or am I wasting my time? Because your time is valuable. Okay? So that's my message. That's what I want women to understand. And that's what I want them to hold on to that truth. And what do I want men to take out of this? Because if there's any men listening, which, sometimes I doubt, but hey, um, I tend to be very neutral. I don't like to blame either gender. I think that we're both equally as guilty in continuing the social and cultural paradigms, right? So if you are a man listening to this, then the only job really that empowered women want you to take on is to learn how to grow your capacity, to look at your own life and to look at where your traumas are, how they inform your behavior, and then sit with yourself and ask yourself if that's a behavior you actually like and want in your life. Ask yourself what you actually really want in your life, not what society told you you want. And develop your own erotic power. Because a lot of men think that all that they are turned on by is stimulation and penetration and hot women. But there is so much more. And when men go on this journey, and I have seen them do it because I roam in enough spiritual circles to see a lot of beautiful, conscious men working on themselves, they realize that they also have this huge world to play in that they never even knew existed. Right? And if you want to see a really cool example of it, if you don't have any examples in your real life, in the Goop series on Netflix, in the Sex and Goop series, there's an episode where so they take these couples, basically these couples that are having troubles, sexually connecting, and they're on this show. They get paired up with amazing people to work with to figure out what's working, what's not working, how can we make it work. End of story. There's a guy in this show. It's this couple that came in where basically the guy's like, I'm turned on by penetration. That's what does it for me. And she's like, I'm turned on by everything else. And they're figuring out their turn ons. And he finds out that he's actually a super energetic being, super turned on by sexuality. And all of a sudden, this area of his mind gets unlocked to such a great extent. And like, this is not necessarily one of those dainty feminine men like some of you might be thinking. No, this is a full blown, like super masculine guy who starts figuring out his own erotic flow. And it's so beautiful to watch because his mind gets blown open by the possibilities in front of him. And let's just say him and his wife have had a much, much better time together ever since that show. But it's something that we all need to work on. And I just need men to understand that you have been programmed by society to think that it's wrong for you to explore yourself, to talk to a therapist, to go to groups of people that are thinking differently. Like, go join a men's circle, and not like a not a mega man circle. Okay, not one of those I'm not even going to say it on this podcast. I don't want to get political, but you know what I'm talking about. Go to a conscious men's circle. Go find your bros that will actually hug you and listen to you when you have emotional shit going on. Don't be afraid to cry. Like, just learn how to be a human being. Learn how to deprogram yourself from this fucking shit system that we've all been a part of for so long. That's my truth piece to you. And what did I want to end on here? I just want you guys to sit with where you are in your life right now. Are you performing? Are you embodied? How do you carry yourself? How aware of you are you of your own situations? It's about really being mindful and being honest with yourself and accepting the fact that we're all a work in progress, and we will be until the day we die. There is no perfection. There is no gold standard version of yourself. It's okay. The only goal I think that we should all have is simply just evolution and growth. Are you evolving? Are you becoming better than the person you were yesterday? Are you inviting in new ways of thinking and new ways of looking at things? So that's what I'm going to leave you with. And if you enjoy me rambling like this sometimes, I promise other times I'm going to be a lot more structured. But if you like these topics, if you find them helpful, if you want me to dive into a specific topic, just follow me on my other socials. The link is going to be in the summary, and drop me a follow, drop me a comment, come say hi, interact, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to hit that follow button to know when the next episode releases.